It's just kind of who I am. I want to pour into my team as much as possible, and I'm pretty in tune with my body. I can read a room pretty well, and so when I see we're lacking a little bit, you got to step up. But if we're good, you're just there to encourage and give people.
Women's basketball just felt a massive shockwave, and this time it didn't come from a game-winning shot. The moment it was revealed that Caitlin Clark locked in a long-term deal with NBC Universal as a featured voice on their basketball broadcasts, everything stopped. This wasn't a young star signing a routine endorsement. It was a direct power move that rewired the media landscape. Clark sent a clear message that she doesn't need approval from the WNBA, and she doesn't need to participate in the league's off-season ventures to remain the most talked-about figure in the sport. While league leadership responded with their familiar cold silence, one player refused to play along. Sophie Cunningham of the Phoenix Mercury, long cast as the antagonist in the Clark narrative, finally snapped. Through subtle comments and overlooked actions, she has begun calling out the hypocrisy eating away at the league from within, laying bare the envy, poor financial decisions, and political games that threaten to destroy the most valuable star women's basketball has ever produced. To understand Cunningham's frustration, you have to grasp the scale of Clark's move. For years, the unwritten rule for WNBA players was clear. Finish the season, then head overseas to chase real money because domestic salaries weren't enough, or more recently, fall in line with league-sanctioned off-season programs. Clark rejected that entire formula. By aligning with NBC, she's stepping onto platforms like Sunday Night Football, Big Ten Saturday Night, and Madison Square Garden, not as a player fighting for minutes, but as a polished analyst seated beside legends such as Vince Carter and Carmelo Anthony. No woman in basketball history has reached this level of mainstream exposure so early in her career. She's no longer positioning herself as just a WNBA athlete, but as an equal within the broader sports world. And the league office's silence says everything. They know their grip on her is slipping. That uneasy quiet, filled with fear of lost control, is exactly what Sophie Cunningham is responding to as tensions rise alongside the controversy surrounding the new unrivaled league. This 3-on-3 league, founded by Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, two undeniable stars who also hold serious power inside the WNBA Players Association, became the pressure point. They didn't just invite Caitlin Clark, they went all in. Reports say they offered her more than $1 million in equity and a contract structure likened to Lionel Messi's Miami deal. Along with the money came an unspoken ultimatum. If she didn't join, she wasn't supporting the sisterhood. The expectation was clear: use your fame to lift our league, help our pockets, and fall in line. When Clark said no and chose NBC instead, resentment inside the old guard circles boiled over. They called it betrayal. But this is where the narrative cracks, because Sophie Cunningham sees what others refuse to admit. From her perspective, the unrivaled league presents a glaring conflict of interest. Active players running a league while pressuring peers to join creates an uncomfortable power imbalance. By walking away, Clark proved she couldn't be bought, guilt-tripped, or bullied, and that's exactly why it stung. For months, the media tried to manufacture a blood feud between Cunningham and Clark, replaying hard fouls, trash talk, and physical screens to paint Sophie as the league's designated enforcer sent to humble the rookie. Yes, Cunningham plays a gritty, physical style, that's her brand, but off the court she's one of the sharpest business minds in the locker room. While other veterans took subtle shots on podcasts or downplayed Clark's impact, Sophie was the one who said the quiet part out loud. During the charter flight debate, she openly admitted the league wasn't flying private because of growth, but because of Caitlin Clark. She shattered the illusion and gave credit where it was due. That's where her frustration comes from. Cunningham sees the sold-out arenas, the chartered planes, the new TV deals, and she knows exactly who signed the checks. To her, the league is happy to cash in on Clark's pull while denying her the respect and autonomy she's earned. So when NBC News broke, Cunningham didn't give the media what it wanted. No jealousy. No cheap shots. Her anger wasn't aimed at Clark. It was aimed at the critics and the system that keeps taking without acknowledging the source. She understands the simplest rule of business: rising tides lift all boats. If Caitlin Clark becomes a full-blown media star on NBC, that attention doesn't disappear, It boomerangs right back to the WNBA when the season tips off. More eyeballs, more sponsors, more leverage for everyone. Cunningham is quietly exposing how short-sighted the bitterness really is. It's almost like she's saying, let her get the bag, because that bag eventually feeds all of us. And that mindset breaks an unspoken rule. WNBA veterans traditionally protect each other in public, even when they're dead wrong behind closed doors. Cunningham is stepping outside that code of silence and siding with logic instead of ego. In a league where cliques and alliances matter, that's borderline revolutionary. Because once you zoom out, the culture she's exposing gets uncomfortable fast. We've all seen it. The comments from legends like Cheryl Swoops that tried to downplay or outright rewrite Clark's record-setting accomplishments using shaky stats. We've seen the awkward freeze-outs around Team USA selection. There's a very real, you can't sit with us, energy that's followed Clark since day one. By taking the NBC deal, Clark didn't just find a new table, she bought the entire restaurant. And Sophie Cunningham seems to be the only one amused by the irony. While others post cryptic social media messages about loyalty, grind, and respect, Cunningham is out here living her best life, visibly unbothered by Clark's rise. That contrast is loud. Her refusal to join the hate train makes the rest of the league's pettiness stand out even more. When Sophie explodes, it's not through rants or subtweets, it's through restraint. She talks hoops. She talks business. And she refuses to tear down the rookie who is quite literally paying the league's bills. Money talks. And right now, Caitlin Clark is screaming, and this is where the numbers matter, because numbers are what fuel the jealousy Cunningham is calling out. The WNBA max salary sits around $250,000. The unrivaled league dangled serious money, sure, but it still required labor, practices, injury risk, a grind-heavy offseason in Miami. The NBC deal? By all accounts, the compensation is massive, likely dwarfing Clark's WNBA salary, without a single hard screen or rolled ankle. She gets paid to sit in a studio, break down the game, and grow her brand. Cunningham, who's fought tooth and nail for every contract she's earned, recognizes the brilliance immediately. Her frustration spikes when she sees players acting like Clark owes them participation. Clark figured out how to make millions without wrecking her body in the offseason. That's not betrayal, that's the blueprint. And Cunningham's reaction feels less like anger and more like exasperation, as if she's yelling, "Take notes," instead of throwing shade. But there's a darker layer here, one Cunningham has only hinted at. The unrivaled league isn't just a side project. It's founded by the president and vice president of the Players Association. That means power, money, and influence are all tangled together. And when the people running the union are also running a league and pressuring players to join, it raises questions no one seems eager to answer. Sophie Cunningham sees that tension. And by siding with Clark's independence, she's quietly challenging the entire power structure without ever saying its name. The whispers matter because of who's involved. When the same people tasked with protecting players' interests are also running a private league that financially benefits from player participation, the lines get blurry fast. Even if everything is technically above board, the optics are rough. And Caitlin Clark saying no didn't just buck a scheduling preference. It challenged that entire power structure. That's why her decision was risky, to be why declining unrivaled. Clark wasn't just turning down money. She was refusing to validate a project tied directly to union leadership. That creates an uncomfortable question no one wants to answer out loud. How can union reps negotiate in good faith for a player when they also want her labor for their own business? Sophie Cunningham absolutely sees that contradiction. She's been around long enough to know how league politics actually work versus how they're sold publicly. When she talks about keeping it real, what she's really signaling is that the private conversations don't match the press releases. Clark's rejection wasn't selfish, it was about autonomy. About not letting anyone else dictate her value or her off-season. And freedom is something Cunningham respects deeply. What makes Sophie fascinating here is her positioning. She's not a rookie dazzled by Clark's fame. She's not a bitter traditionalist clinging to the old order. She's a veteran who understands both the grind and the business, and refuses to pretend otherwise. That puts her in a rare middle ground where she can see the fractures forming across locker rooms. Those fractures are real. You've got younger players and business-minded vets who understand that Clark is a force multiplier: attention, revenue, leverage. Then you've got traditionalists who genuinely believe the league was fine before Clark arrived and resent the idea that one player shifted the ecosystem overnight. Cunningham's explosion is disruptive precisely because she won't echo either extreme. She won't tear Clark down, and she won't pretend the league is a utopia. She also refuses to be weaponized. The media loves the Sophie versus Caitlin villain arc. A hard foul clipped out of context. A freeze-frame screenshot. A caption screaming, "bad blood." But if you actually watch beyond the whistle, handshakes, mutual respect, post-game interactions, the narrative collapses. Cunningham knows this. Her recent refusal to bite on the NBC storyline isn't passive, it's strategic. By not being angry, she breaks the script, and that might be what frustrates the machine the most. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. With NBC, Caitlin Clark now has leverage the league cannot fully control. Sunday Night Football is the biggest stage in American sports. If Clark ever wanted to contextualize WNBA issues, even subtly, she could do it in front of millions. That megaphone doesn't belong to the league. It doesn't belong to the union. It belongs to her. That scares executives. And Cunningham understands exactly why she's clashed with league politics before. She knows how fines, narratives, and unwritten rules are used to keep players in line. So when she sees Clark stepping outside that box, maximizing her value without asking permission, it doesn't trigger jealousy. It triggers validation. Proof that players can have power if they're bold enough to claim it. And then there's the elephant everyone tiptoes around. Race has been injected into the Clark conversation so aggressively that it's poisoned honest analysis. Some claim her popularity is purely demographic. Others insist the criticism is racially motivated. It's become a toxic, zero-sum framing that benefits nobody, and it's something Cunningham has consistently rejected. She treats Clark as what she is, a basketball player and a business force. Why refusing to engage in race-baiting narratives, Cunningham strips them of oxygen. She doesn't debate sociology on podcasts. She talks hoops. She talks money. She talks reality. And in doing so, she exposes how unserious a lot of the discourse has become. That might be the most subversive part of all this. Caitlin Clark didn't just sign with NBC. She demonstrated independence. Sophie Cunningham didn't just stay quiet. She sided with autonomy over conformity. Together, whether intentionally or not, they're signaling a shift. Players don't have to be grateful, quiet, or obedient anymore. And that idea, that's far more threatening than any 3-on-3 league ever could be. Sophie Cunningham wants to hoop and get paid. Period. And she recognizes Caitlin Clark is doing the same thing, just at a scale the league wasn't prepared for. With Clark out, does Unrivaled lose its shine? Let's be real, yes. Not because it can't survive, but because it was built around the expectation of the Caitlin Clark stimulus package. TV interest, ticket demand, cultural relevance. Without her, it's no longer a must-watch. It's just another startup fighting for oxygen. The organizers know it. The players know it. That's where the bitterness comes from, and that is the hypocrisy Cunningham can't stand. Players publicly downplaying Clark's impact while privately hoping she'd save their league's economics. We don't like you, but please come fund our future. Sophie is too sharp for that nonsense. Now zoom out to what this actually means for the WNBA season ahead. Caitlin Clark isn't returning as just a second-year guard. She's coming back as an NBC-backed media figure, a recognizable national voice, someone with institutional power behind her. That changes everything. The hazing era is over. The unchecked physicality is over. The subtle freeze-outs are over. She didn't just survive the system. She outgrew it, and Cunningham sees that clearly. Her refusal to engage in pettiness isn't accidental, it's adaptive. She's signaling to the rest of the league, this is the new reality. You can resent it, or you can benefit from it. But fighting it is a losing battle. That's why the villain narrative collapsed. Sophie Cunningham was supposed to be the antagonist, the enforcer, the rival, the jealous vet. Instead, she's emerged as something far more dangerous to bad systems, a truth teller. She's exposed a league that celebrates Clark's revenue while resenting her leverage. A culture that demands loyalty but doesn't offer protection. A business model that wants the money without surrendering control. And in doing so, she's made one thing clear: she's not Caitlin Clark's enemy, she's a competitor who respects the hustle. Caitlin Clark has changed women's basketball forever, not just how it's played, but how power works within it. And Sophie Cunningham appears to be one of the few veterans willing to say the quiet part out loud. Now the WNBA has a choice. Stay bitter. Or get smarter. But if history tells us anything, the drama isn't ending anytime soon. This 3-on-3 league, founded by Breanna Stewart and Nefisa Collier, two undeniable stars who also hold serious power inside the WNBA Players Association, became the pressure point. They didn't just invite Caitlin Clark, they went all in. Reports say they offered her more than $1 million in equity and a contract structure likened to Lionel Messi's Miami deal. Along with the money came an unspoken ultimatum: if she didn't join, she wasn't supporting the sisterhood. The expectation was clear: use your fame to lift our league, help our pockets, and fall in line. When Clark said no and chose NBC instead, resentment inside the old guard circles boiled over. They called it betrayal. But this is where the narrative cracks, because Sophie Cunningham sees what others refuse to admit. From her perspective, the unrivaled league presents a glaring conflict of interest. Active players running a league while pressuring peers to join creates an uncomfortable power imbalance. By walking away, Clark proved she couldn't be bought, guilt-tripped, or bullied, and that's exactly why it stung. For months, the media tried to manufacture a blood feud between Cunningham and Clark, replaying hard fouls, trash talk, and physical screens to paint Sophie as the league's designated enforcer sent to humble the rookie. Yes, Cunningham plays a gritty, physical style, that's her brand, but off the court she's one of the sharpest business minds in the locker room. While other veterans took subtle shots on podcasts or downplayed Clark's impact, Sophie was the one who said the quiet part out loud. During the charter flight debate, she openly admitted the league wasn't flying private because of growth, but because of Caitlin Clark. She shattered the illusion and gave credit where it was due. That's where her frustration comes from. Cunningham sees the sold-out arenas, the chartered planes, the new TV deals, and she knows exactly who signed the checks. To her, the league is happy to cash in on Clark's pull while denying her the respect and autonomy she's earned. So when NBC News broke, Cunningham didn't give the media what it wanted. No jealousy. No cheap shots. Her anger wasn't aimed at Clark. It was aimed at the critics and the system that keeps taking without acknowledging the source.